How did it end? The Buckball Stadium had largely emptied since the end of the game, and now there was the usual throng of ponies all wanting autographs and just generally wanting to spend time with the athletes. It was more or less accepted that the day's excitement had ended. Mares and stallions, fillies and colts began to trickle out of the stadium, leaving behind either only a devoted few fans to chat with each other, or the athletes themselves, who finished up their day with either a casual conversation or some practice of the sport. Among the crowd, however, was a lone mare finishing off the last of her soda. Clear Sky, after slurping down one gulp in particular, looked down and smiled as she saw her daughter. Little Wind was as happy as she could be down there, talking to Fluttershy about her role in the team and her experiences. Clear even giggled a fair bit as the filly waved to her from down there, but her attention was soon drawn to the one who now approached her from the side. Quibble, smiling to her, offered her a new soda to replace the now empty one she'd been holding.
"Here you go, sweetie,"
he said, and Claire smiled back to him.
"Thanks, honey."
Together, the couple sat beside one another, drinking their sodas together, and watching as Wind began to play with Snips and Snails in a mock buckball game, all while the others cheered them on. Quibble especially seemed pleased with this, as evident by the sigh he now released.
"You know, you were right."
Clear arched an eyebrow at him.
"Oh, really? You don't say."
Quibble chuckled.
Yes, I know. I should have listened from the start, but yeah, I would have been better off just, being myself around her. It would have been easier on my muscles, if nothing else."
The two laughed together, and Claire scooted on closer to him, wrapping a hoof tenderly around him and holding him closer to her.
"You've got nothing to worry about, Quibble. I know things were a bit shaky there for a time, but it all worked out in the end."
Quibble grinned nervously back to her.
"Yeah."
Then his eyes darted down to Rainbow and the other Ponyville mares.
"Things always seem to when those mares are around."
Clear nodded in agreement, then looked to her colt friend softly.
"Besides, you're hardly the first stallion who's had silly ideas that, well, I've had to deal with."
She finished that off with another giggle, after which she got back to her soda, but while she may have started to focus again on her daughter, there was something about what she'd said that echoed in Quibble's mind. Something that began to stir a curiosity in him that, at the same time, evoked feelings of concern and nervousness. There was something that he wanted to say, or perhaps felt that he even needed to, yet it was clear from the look on his face that doing so would have been difficult for him. However, if there was one thing the recent series of events had taught him, it was the value of honesty. So, after taking a deep breath, he set his drink to one side and turned to Clear.
Clear?"
Claire looked back to him.
"Yes, Quibble?"
Though hesitant, it only lasted a moment, and the stallion finally asked his question.
"So why did things end between you and Wind's dad?"
A silence fell, and for a time, Claire looked quite surprised at having been asked the question. Quibble worried about how this question might be taken, that it might upset her in some way, and that was a fear that only deepened as he saw her start to look at him more seriously.
"Quibble, you never asked me that before, not once. Why now?"
Quibble sighed, taking off his hat, and hanged his head slightly.
You're right. I should have asked a lot sooner. It's just, I don't know. I was worried that it might just open up an old wound, or that you wouldn't want reminding of him, or something like that."
Claire tilted her head.
"So, I'm guessing you already have some idea in your mind as to what happened?"
Quibble, though still worried, gave a shrug.
"Hey, I'm kind of a professional fanboy. Making headcanons is part of the job description."
Claire actually laughed a little at that, which understandably alleviated much of the tension the two were feeling. It was a welcome reprieve, that much was obvious, but it only lasted a few moments. When it was finished, it was Claire's turn to sigh, and she looked over to her cult friend earnestly.
"Well, I'm sorry to disappoint whatever picture you made, but things between me and him just ended."
Quibble didn't quite get it, so Claire elaborated.
"There was nothing bad or dramatic about it, really. No arguments, no feeling unhappy around one another, no final goodbye on a rainy day. Just things stopped being what they were."
She turned, looking down to her daughter from afar.
"Things were good between us for a long time. Good enough for us to want a child together, but, well, as time went on, the love we used to feel for one another just, faded. We still cared for one another, and we wanted to be there for Wind, but we both knew that things had reached a point where we just didn't love each other anymore. At least, not how we used to.
She looked back to him.
After a while, we started talking about it, and he said, maybe we should stay together, if only for Wind's sake, but after talking some more, we both knew that it wouldn't do any pony any good to keep the relationship going on if we didn't mean it. We didn't want an empty relationship, and we certainly didn't want that kind of relationship to be the kind of thing our daughter took as some kind of example as she grew up.
She sighed again.
So, we ended it. It was hard, of course, having to explain it to Wind, but I think she knew as well as we did that we couldn't keep things going as they were.
Her smile returned, albeit smaller than it was before.
But he's still there for her. Whenever he has the chance, he spends every moment of free time he has with her, and I'll always be thankful to him for that.
Quibble, stunned after hearing all that, sounded more than a little uncertain as he finally spoke up. So, things are okay with you two? Claire nodded.
They are. We're still friends, and whenever we can meet up with one another and try to catch up, always with Wind there, of course. Well, things aren't ever gonna be what they used to be, but that's no reason to just cut things off between us completely.
Quibble, having taken in all of that, looked away from her, thinking on everything he had learned. Well, that's not what I was expecting. Claire raised an eyebrow.
What? Not dramatic enough?
No, it wasn't,
Quibble answered immediately. Then he realized what he had just said and snapped back to look at her.
Oh, I don't mean to say I want things to be dramatic, of course, I just,
Thankfully, Claire just took that whole blunder on his part as something funny, then reached over and gave him a quick pat on his shoulder.
Don't worry about it. I know ponies will often think of bad circumstances when they hear of family situations like mine and Wind's, and perhaps not without cause. And yes, it was sad for us when we stopped after it happened and realized that things had changed.
Quibble calmed down, looking to her and seeing her dwell on past memories, though still retaining her smile.
But I consider us fortunate that things ended as they did. And no pony got hurt, there was no heartbreak, and I think even Wind will be fine after a time. She still misses her father when she's not with him, and I wouldn't ask her not to, but she knows as well as we do that having things end was, well, for the best.
The stallion looked to his filly friend, and though he felt much calmer and more relaxed than he had done, there was still some measure of uncertainty to him. And us? With her smile widening, Claire leaned forward, giving him a tender kiss on the cheek.
Don't worry. You're no intruder in this, never have been. And I'm happy being with you, Quibble, and I'm sure Wind feels that way too.
The two looked down to the filly in question, and sure enough, she was smiling to them, even giving Quibble a wave. Quibble himself waved back as he looked back to the mare at his side, and he began to breathe a sigh of relief.
That's good to hear. And, Claire?
Yes, Quibble?
The stallion hesitated, then smiled wider than before.
I'm happy to have a family like you two.
The two smiled lovingly at one another, moving closer and embracing one another in a warm hug. The other ponies in the stadium were oblivious to this, and several minutes passed before the couple finally parted from one another, and when they did, Claire giggled a little before nudging Quibble on the side.
Say, I want to go down there and have a play with Wind. I'm sure she'd like that.
Here, Quibble tensed.
Thanks for the offer, sweetie, but I think I've failed at buckball enough for one day.